Let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. I want to start this video off by talking about Luke Getsy first because he's their biggest problem. I understand the quarterback play is terrible, and they're going to be in the running to go out there and draft a guy like Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, or maybe Quinn Ewers in this year's draft class. We'll talk about that later in the video. Luke Getsy, when it's 1st and 20, runs the football. 2nd and 18, runs the football. The worst offensive coordinator in the NFL. Nathaniel Hackett no longer calls plays with the Jets, so Luke Getsy takes that cake now. He is terrible. He was horrible with the Chicago Bears. He was never supposed to be the offensive coordinator to begin with. The Las Vegas Raiders wanted to bring in Cliff Kingsbury, but they could not come down to a dollar amount. So he walks away. He goes to the Washington Commanders. That was a complete blunder by the Las Vegas Raiders. And they had to settle for Luke Getsy because pretty much all of the other offensive coordinators were gone at that point. This was the worst case scenario for the Raiders. For them to go out there and hire a guy like Luke Getsy, who offensive play calls are completely terrible and they're very predictable because if it's 1st or 2nd down, he's going to run the football. And occasionally after halftime, he'll throw a screen with Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew and defenses will be completely over it. He's terrible. You know what made the Raiders so interesting last season? Even when they beat the Kansas City Chiefs, what were they able to do? Run the football. They were able to run the football up the middle. They were able to run the football to the outside as well with Josh Jacobs. Now, Zamir White last season was a better running back with the Raiders than Josh Jacobs. Zamir White this season hasn't been good. Neither has Alexander Mattison. Why do they constantly continue to run the football up the middle of the field and your offensive line? That's where they're weakest at. That's where they're the weakest at. It's the middle of the field. Yes, you have Jackson Powers-Johnson, who I do believe is going to be a very good interior offensive lineman over the next couple of years. But when Cody Whitehair was a consistent starter, they constantly would run the football behind Cody Whitehair, and they still do. What? It makes zero sense. It's just frustrating to watch on film. And then you have a guy like Luke Getsy come out, and he'll say, you know what? I like what the offense did today. That's their biggest problem right there. He likes what he sees on the field. And I do feel for Coach AP. Forget Luke Getsy for a second because he almost ran Justin Fields into the ground with the Chicago Bears. He kept calling the same screens to the right side of the field, the same run plays up the middle of the field, and the same toss play that is never going to work. It didn't work for the last 2 to 3 years. It's not going to work now. But when I look at the quarterback play for the Raiders, Aiden O'Connell is not the long-term answer, and neither is Gardner Minshew. Because we could put the play calling on the back burner. Neither one of these guys are good enough to go out there and get you to the NFL playoffs. And neither one of these guys are good enough to go out there and to throw for over 20 touchdowns in a season. When you look at Gardner Minshew, he has been in the NFL for a couple of years now. He'll have a couple of good stints. A lot of people love him because of the mustache. He's a gimmick quarterback. He's a fun player to root for. As a backup, he's solid. The same with Aiden O'Connell. If he was a backup, hey, you're in a very good situation. As your week-to-week starters, you're in a horrible situation. They're not good enough. And they have weapons on this offense. Their offensive line is a huge issue. That's why they should trade Devontae Adams for a second-round pick plus more to put more picks into this offensive line and to truly invest and rebuild this offensive line. Yes, you have Colton Miller at the tackle position. I can't say enough good things about Jackson Powers-Johnson, but the jury is still out on him because he's a young player. But you have a guy like Cody Whitehair. He's completely terrible at the guard position. They need to move on sooner than later. When you look at the Raiders, they have weapons on the outside. Forget Devontae Adams for a second. You have Jacoby Myers. Yes, he missed the game against the Steelers dealing with an ankle injury. Very good wide receiver. That's the one good thing that came away from the Josh McDaniels administration. They brought in one good wide receiver, and he's very good when he's fully healthy. Trey Tucker has been on the milk card. Where has he been? He can be a top deep threat in the NFL with the speed that he has. He was phenomenal in the preseason. So how do they follow it up? By rarely giving him the football. And they rarely use him on crossing patterns. They rarely use him in the backfield in terms of just throwing him screens. They rarely use him at all. And this is one of the faster players, if not the fastest player on the team. He'll occasionally go out there and he'll be a decoy. That's it. He could be used like how Rashid Shaheed is being used for the New Orleans Saints. And I'm not saying that he could be a Tyreek Hill type of player, but you can go out there, you can get him the football, use him as a decoy. They give Brock Bowers the football, yes, because he's a first-round pick and he's a generational talent at that position. Brock Bowers is one of the best tight ends in the NFL, not just for rookies. He's amazing straight out the gate. Right now, he's putting up more numbers in terms of receptions and receiving yards as I record this video than guys like Travis Kelce and George Kittle. He's a very good tight end. So you have him. You have Jacoby Myers. You have Trey Tucker. You bring in a guy like Shedeur Sanders or a guy like Cam Ward. I think that you will be very good off with those guys in the future because of the weapons that you have around them. But when I look at these running backs, they're not good enough either. Zamir White is an okay power back. Alexander Madison is good here and there, but he's not consistent. That's why he bounced from the Minnesota Vikings to the Las Vegas Raiders. It's not good enough. They're 31st in rushing. This was a team that was able to run the football last season. Just a couple years ago, Josh Jacobs led the league in rushing with the Las Vegas Raiders. And now you're putting more strain on Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell because of a terrible offensive philosophy that Luke Getsy has. He's a terrible offensive coordinator. He should be fired right now. Anyone on this coaching staff, even some defensive coordinators, are better at calling plays than him. He is terrible. He was horrible with the Chicago Bears, and he's horrible now. I really wish that Cliff Kingsbury came over to the Las Vegas Raiders, but it didn't work out. Look at the work that he's doing right now with Jaden Daniels and that crew. Just completely ridiculous what's going on with Luke Getsy. That's their biggest problem. Forget the players for a second. It's him because he's a horrible play caller. When I look at the defense is not that bad, even with Christian Wilkins being out. They played very good defense early on against the Steelers. And they had a very good first drive until Luke Getsy wanted to continue to run the same plays over and over again. And the defensive coordinator of the Steelers was all over it. But when I look at the defense for the Raiders, you have talent. They have a top passing defense in the NFL. Their passing defense is very good. Now, not having Christian Wilkins does hurt. And they're going to be without him for the next couple of weeks because he had to get foot surgery. In theory, Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby should be quarterback hunters for the entire game. But we'll see the Raiders go out there. They'll play very good defense. And what does them in is that their offense, 3 and out or interception. And it constantly keeps the defense on the field. And then they get tired and they can't stop the run. We saw that happen against the Los Angeles Chargers. We saw that happen against the Steelers. They were very good early on against the run. But as the game progresses and as the offense is not doing much, the defense has to stay out there. They're tired. And now they're running the football down their throat. They're having a tough time stopping the run as well. And I like Robert Spillane. I like Divine Diablo as well. Those are two very good linebackers, in my opinion. Nate Hobbs, I like him a lot in the secondary. I like Trayvon Mooring as well at the safety position. Tyree Wilson. This is a kid that was drafted in the first round a couple years ago. Did not do much last season, his rookie season. A lot of people may disagree with me when I say this, but I've seen this song and dance before. This is a guy that was a project player coming out of Texas Tech. He got drafted in the first round based off of potential. Teams that need quarterback help and teams that need to go out there and prioritize other parts of their roster, they have to stop going out there and drafting project players in the first round. Tyree Wilson, if he was to pan out, he was going to be a beast just like Trayvon Walker. But instead, he hasn't been that guy. He's been terrible. He's a horrible defensive end. They try to use him as a spy against the Steelers. He's just getting blown by Justin Fields. He can't even do that. You can't even use him as a quarterback spy. He never was able to go back there on a consistent basis and get after the quarterback. We saw that in his days with Texas Tech. He was just a very good run stopper that just had amazing bend. That was it. It hasn't translated over to the NFL, and I don't believe that it ever will translate over to the NFL. I don't say this often on this channel. It's very rare. But the Las Vegas Raiders have to tank. That's how bad they are right now offensively. They have to go out there and tank to bring in a quarterback. I think if they had a decent quarterback, they would be a threat in this division because it opens up everything. You get rid of this offensive coordinator, you go out there and bring in a quarterback that can get the football to where it needs to be and won't go out there and throw interceptions like Gardner Minshew and run yourself into sacks like Minshew and a guy that has better mobility than Aiden O'Connell. They have the pieces to go out there and compete. That is what's so frustrating with the Las Vegas Raiders. Because on the surface, you'll look at the Raiders and say, man, this team is garbage. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL. But the talent that they have, they shouldn't be in this situation. When you have guys like Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins when he's fully healthy, Nate Hobbs, Trayvon Mooring. We saw a similar pattern last season. Jimmy Garoppolo led the league in interceptions before he got benched and he was dealing with a shoulder injury. But their defense would go out there and they would ball out. The worst thing the Raiders could have ever done was move on from Derek Carr. And Josh McDaniels let that happen. Matter of fact, he made that happen. Him and his quote-unquote leadership. And they brought in a bum quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo that was just a system player for the San Francisco 49ers. So many people want to call Brock Purdy a system player. Jimmy Garoppolo is a definition of a system quarterback. Because as soon as he came over, he was terrible. This is a quarterback that had Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. He had all the talent around him, and he could not do anything with it but throw interceptions. He was terrible. One of the worst hires that they have made in Raiders history will be Josh McDaniels, him and Dave Ziegler. The man was so bad, they fired him at the halfway point of last season when the Detroit Lions blew them out on Monday Night Football game, and they went with Coach AP. And he went 5-4 in the back half of the season. But they can't afford to go out there and win 7 or 8 games this season. Especially with this quarterback play, you have to put yourself into a situation to where you tank or you trade Devontae Adams for some assets and you use those assets to trade up in the NFL draft. Because I do not believe a guy like Carson Beck can come in and be successful with the Raiders. I don't think that he'll be a successful quarterback in the NFL. I could be wrong about that. But you have to be within the top 3 to within the top 5 at least to get you a guy like Quinn Ewers, Shedeur Sanders, or Cam Ward. And those are the best options for the Raiders. And what makes this even more embarrassing and makes this even more annoying if you're a Raiders fan, this is one of the weaker quarterback classes in the last couple of years. So it's not a guarantee that the guy that you draft on to come in and automatically be able to just come in and take over like a Jaden Daniels or a CJ Stroud. I still do believe that the Raiders have the right head coach in Antonio Pierce. Max Crosby loves him. I do not see Max Crosby going anywhere. He's going to stay with the Raiders. They're not going to just do a complete fire sale. They're going to get off Devontae Adams because he wants to go to a quote-unquote contender. He just wants to play with better quarterback play, whether that's Derek Carr, his best friend, or a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who he had a lot of success with the Green Bay Packers. And I would urge the Raiders to do this. Yes, he's an older player. He's an older wide receiver. Most teams, they don't want to give up a second-round pick. Go out there and wait. Maybe an injury happens. I'm knocking on wood. I don't want to see that happen. Or maybe a team gets desperate enough to then they'll come to you and they'll say, you know what, we'll give you a 2nd round pick and a 5th round pick as well. Or maybe they'll give you a 2nd, a 5th, and a future 5th round pick for next year's draft class. You have to get the most out of this deal because Devontae Adams is still one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Don't just trade this man for a 4th round pick and be done with it. No, scratch this out. And if Devontae Adams wants to sit out, hey, it's cost of doing business. He wants to leave, that's fine. Give him what he wants, but also make sure that you can get what you can get out of this deal as well. Make sure you can get as much as possible. You do not want to be in this situation to where you're going out there and you're just pleasing players and you're setting your franchise back because this team needs as much draft capital possible and they need as much help as possible on the offensive side. But my key takeaways for the Raiders this season, bad quarterback play, bad offensive line play, and a horrible offensive coordinator above everything else. Luke Getsy doesn't even deserve to be in the NFL. That is how bad he is as an offensive coach. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you guys feel about the Las Vegas Raiders and can they turn things around? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, I want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. God bless. Peace.